The land on which we gather has been home to Indigenous people for at least 13,000 years. This is the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe nations, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the land around the Great Lakes. This territory is also covered by Treaty 13 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit. This week, Library and Archives Canada announced that they will soon, in the next few weeks, complete the digitization of more than 6 million records related to the so-called Indian day schools, which were operated between 1860 and 2000 and were attended by about 200,000 students. So these were schools run by the federal government on reserves, I guess, as opposed to the residential schools where students lived there. They lived with their families. But the purpose of the schools was similar in that it was to assimilate Indigenous people into European Canadian society. The digitization is intended to provide easier access to these records for the communities where the schools existed and to support research. This work reminds me that when we think about truth and reconciliation, we're still have a great deal of truth to record and to understand. For example, when I was preparing the Territory Acknowledgement this morning, I learned just today that the United Church ran 95 Indian day schools. So the documents can help understand this aspect of our history better. For example, the Professor Jackson Pind from Trent University has researched, so to choose an example close to home, he has researched the Curve Lake First Nation and their Indian day school and the advocacy that community did over years to try to have better education for their kids. And then ultimately, the leadership of that community decided to acquire transportation and have their students educated in public schools in Peterborough and Lakeside, if I remember the name of the other community, and decided that the Indian day schools were not going to work for their students and did not provide the quality of education that they expected.